All right, video's pretty late. Not feeling too well. So if you need another day to do this, that's fine. Question one. Dolphin was swimming at negative 20 feet below sea level. First of all, let's draw the ocean. The ocean, the sea level is 0, right? We use 0, our integer 0 to represent that. Anything underwater, we use negative. Anything above water, we use positive. So right now, the dolphin's at negative 20. So here's a dolphin. Okay. He dives even further down, and he travels a distance further, deeper into the ocean, and that distance that he traveled is 45 feet. Right, that's what the question says. And then it dove 45 feet below its original position. So he was originally negative 20. He goes further down 45 feet. It's not asking you here where does he end up. We know, well, if we want to find that out, we add negative 20, right? He goes further down 45 feet. He ends up at negative 65. So there is a dolphin's new position, but that's not what the question is asking. The question is asking, how do we represent this using an integer, right? What integer represents the depth of the dolphin's dive? So he went further, deeper into the ocean. How do we represent this, the distance that he dove, as an integer? Well, can't be. Let's eliminate the ones that make no sense. Well, it's not C because he didn't dive 20 feet, right? He didn't dive negative 20 feet, right? Because those two have actually nothing to do with the question. Well, here, right? This is what they're asking. How do we represent this as an integer? Well, because he's going further away from 0, right? Going down in this case, we use negative 45. Okay? I'll put that negative sign there. I'll come back to 4. 2. On a winter Monday in Prescott, the temperature at 8 a.m. was negative 8. At 1 p.m. was 27. By how many degrees did the temperature change? So I think with all these questions, temperature, depth, it's nice if you draw something out. So the temperature was negative 8 degrees Fahrenheit at 8 a.m. At 1 p.m., it was 27 degrees Fahrenheit. So temperature definitely went up. So let me write 1 p.m. Temperature went from here all the way to positive 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Let me take that positive sign out of there. All right, so imagine that. Right, so it went from negative 8 all the way to 27. How much did what was the change in temperature? What was the change in temperature? Well, first of all, the change, you have to understand the change was positive, right? Because if you're going from negative 8 all the way to positive 27, the change is going to be positive. Right? Because if the change was negative, the temperature would have decreased. So because the temperature went up, right, the change is going to be positive. So whatever change it was, it's going to be positive. So right off the bat, I can take this guy out, and I can take this guy out. Because both of them are negative change, right? And those would apply only if the temperature had decreased. So either the temperature went up by 19 degrees, or now the temperature went up by 35 degrees. One of the two. Now, let me draw a better number line than that one, and maybe you can understand it a little bit more. Let's say this is 0 degrees. This is 0, and over here is negative 8. And over here on the top, it's 27 degrees. Right, so they're asking what was a change to go from 8 all the way to positive 27. Well, if you think about this in 2 steps, maybe it's easier for you to understand. So think about from negative 8 to 0. How many, what was the distance traveled from negative 8 to 0? Well, you would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? There's a change of 8 going from negative 8 to 0. Now, think about from 0 to 27. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, blah, 20, 21, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, right? So from 0 to 27, you would have to travel 27 degrees. Now, the total change in temperature would be the sum of this plus this, the sum of 8 plus 27. So 8 plus 27 equals 35. Therefore, your answer is 2. To answer the answer number 2 is D. Okay. Now, those of you who did that exercise earlier in the beginning with temperatures, there was a little activity that you guys did. Traveling from Alaska to New York to Chicago to I forget what other cities, to Dallas to Hawaii, Honolulu, right? And if you remember, change is final temperature, right? Or final minus your starting temperature. Right, so if you remember that, final temperature in this case 27 minus the beginning temperature, which is negative 8, you get 27. Remember, you can rewrite the subtraction as an addition, right, by adding the additive inverse of negative 8, which is 8, and you get 35. 3. On June 1st, Mary had a balance of $50 in her account. During June, she made the 4 transactions below. So let's start. So 50, she deposited 25, which means we add 25. Remember, deposit is something that you add on to your account, right? Then she takes away 30, so we're going to go minus 30, right? She spent. Wrote a check for 60, so I don't know who writes checks anymore, but writing a check for 60 is the same thing as spending $60, right? You wrote a check for something, so minus 60. And then paid a bank fee of 25. Again, if you're paying something, right, that's minus, so minus 25. If there were no other transactions, what was the balance in her account? Well, all you gotta do is add or subtract those. So 50 plus 25 minus 30 minus 60 minus 25 gives you, so her account would say you now have negative 40 in her account, which means she owes the bank money. So the answer, so 3 would be B. Okay. Let's go to 4. Okay, so 4, a group of hikers from Salt Flats, elevation negative 55. So again, all right, so there's a group of hikers, and again, let me draw this like this. Let me make that 0. Currently, they're at negative 55. That's where they are here, the hikers. Okay, and they're going to go all the way up to 620, and I'll make this 620 way up here. All right, so you're at negative 55, and you're climbing from negative 55, and you're going all the way up to 620. Think about, I don't know, think about a building, all right, and you live in an apartment. And 0 would be the ground floor, right? And let's just say it's a huge building. And you live on the negative 55th floor, so you're 55 floors underground. And there's a restaurant on the top of the building, but the restaurant is on top, is at the 620th floor. So imagine, so if I were to ask you, right, how many floors would you have to travel to go from negative 55, where you are, underground, all the way to the 620th floor? What would be the total number of flights that you would have traveled? Well, break it into 2 parts. From negative 55 to 0, if you travel from negative 55 to 0, that's 55 floors, right, that you went up. And then from 0 all the way to 620th floor, how many floors did you just travel? Well, 620. Well, so the combined distance that you traveled would be 620 plus 55, and that gives you 675. 4 is D. Okay. 5, simplify the expression. Okay, so this is literally a calculator. I mean, I don't think you'll see too many of these because it's literally a calculator problem. So if you have a calculator in your hand, I would definitely practice that. All right. So what do we have here? 1/8. Right, so if you, let me do this more. That becomes, so think about what that is. It's -1/2 times -1/2 times -1/2, right? So it's a negative times a negative times a negative, which is going to give you a negative, and then 1 times 1 times 1 on top is 1, and at the bottom 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So it's, we can change, so well, you're not going to do that, but in your calculator you're going to put 1/8 plus, all that becomes -1/8 minus, now this is different here. Notice that in parentheses you have 1/4 raised to the second power. So it's 1/4 raised to the second power. So everything inside the parentheses get multiplied by itself twice. You get 1/4 times 1/4, which is 1/16, minus 1/16. Okay. So the answer to this one, without using a calculator, well, you know 1/8 plus -1/8 becomes 0. So the only thing you have left over is -1/16. Okay. So I think the key part in this was this for you to understand the difference between this and this. On one, you have this, and the other one, you have this. Notice the difference. Okay. So here, remember, everything in the parentheses is raised to the third power. So that's why I did -1/2 times -1/2 times -1/2. Whereas here, it was 1/4 times 1/4. Okay? Again, it's a calculator problem. Okay, this one, again, just put in your calculator. It's exactly the way it is. Okay? If by any chance you don't want to do it as a calculator, -2/3, and we can change to an addition. So -2/3 plus the additive inverse of -2/5, which is, what do you call, 2/5. Right? So that's what you have. You can find common denominators. Let's do it. This is 15 is a common denominator. Sorry, I forgot a minus here. So it's times 5 became 15. Right? We're finding an equivalent fraction. 2/3 becomes 10, the same thing as 10/15. And how do we write 2/5 using 15 as denominator? Well, the 5 became a 15 multiplied by 3, and the 2 becomes, so if the bottom was multiplied by 3, multiply the top by 3, so 2 times 3 is 6. Now we just add, right? Denominators don't change, and -10 plus 6 is -4. So what do we got? 6 is B. All right, so I don't want to count too much on those questions. Just like this one, again, straight up in the calculator, just as it is. So the one thing I can do right now is know that it's a negative divided by a negative, right? So remember, negative divided by a negative, my answer is going to be positive something. So right off the bat, this is garbage. I don't even want to look at this. And this, I don't even look at this. It's either going to be one or the other. Right? Now, without even doing a calculator, again, think about it. How many times? So if you have -1 1/5 divided by -1 5/6, so how many times can this number go into that number? Right? D says, well, 11/5. That's the same thing as 2 1/5. Right? So do you think -1 forget the negative for a second. Do you think 1 5/6 can go inside 1 1/5 twice? Can this number, so -1 1/5 is -1.2. So let's forget the negatives. Divided by, let me just round 5/6 here for you. That's about 1.8. So do you think 1.8 fits inside 1.2 2.5 times? I don't think so. Right? So if you didn't use a calculator, the only possible answer would be that one, because that makes no sense either. So just by process of elimination, you can also start doing these problems, which would be interesting. method to do on the test. This one, again, feel free to put it in your calculator. Let's see if I can do this without calculator. So, I mean, -3. So this -6 times this big parenthesis here. So think about the top. -3 minus 7.4 is about -10. And then it says divide by a half. Think about how many times a half. And I'm rounding. I didn't notice that I didn't put the -10.4. I just put -10. It should be okay. How many times can a half go into -10? Well, about 20 times, right? Notice that my answer is going to be negative. Okay, so this whole thing is about, let me change this. I'm going to write -6, that's outside, and that it's about -20. So negative times a negative is a positive, 6 times 20, 124.8. So my answer, I mean, without using a calculator, right, looks like it's D. And again, do me a favor, put this whole thing in a calculator. So if we did this calculator, -6. On the top, we got -3 minus 10.4, which is -10.4, right? Which you're going to divide by half. You can take that from the calculator, just to make sure that I'm okay. Sorry, I was correct. 10.4 divided by a half, and this. So again, -6. You don't have to do it in steps. This becomes -20.8, right? And -20.8 times 6, look at that, 124.8, which is D. So you didn't need a calculator, but obviously it's a state test. Don't take any chances. If you can use a calculator, go ahead and do it. Number 9, careful. You need to put parentheses. When you enter this in your calculator, please do not put it like this. Okay, don't do it that way, because you're not going to get what the calculator is probably going to do. Is going to do 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3 and the minus sign over here in the front. Okay, so you need to be really careful how you input this. So that's what the calculator is going to be doing for you. Alright, so we get negative times a negative times a negative, which is a negative. So this is garbage and that's garbage. So you know the answer is going to be negative. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and at the bottom is 27. And the only possible answer is C. And then the beauty about this is this one is one of those that you really didn't need to do anything. As long as you knew that it was going to be a negative, right? Because you're raising a negative to a third power, which is going to result into a negative. So right off the bat, this, and this. This one you really didn't need a calculator. 10. Absolute values. Don't know, remember how. So let's do this without calculators. Again, so minus absolute value of 7 minus 3. Well, let's figure out what 7 minus 3 is for. 7 minus 3 is actually 4. Absolute value minus absolute value negative 5. Let's do this in order. Next, well, minus, what's the absolute value of 4? How far is 4? How many units is 4 away from 0? Well, the absolute value of 4 is 4. So I'm going to write 4. Right? I'm going to replace that with 4. Minus, right, that minus side. And what's the absolute value of negative 4? So negative 5. How many units? Right, what's the distance from negative 5 to 0? Well, it's 5 units away, right? So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Now you're ready to put that in your calculator, and you should get negative 9. 11, what is the value of the expression? All right, so before you take the absolute value, we have to simplify everything that's inside. So let's do some of that. So negative 5, we're not doing anything with it. Plus, again, this, please make sure you put that correctly in your calculator. Right, you should put negative 3 in parentheses raised to a second power. Okay. because then the calculator is going to do -3 times -3, which is a negative times a negative, which is a positive, and 3 times 3 is 9. So this becomes 9. All right. Now we can add both numbers, integers. -5 plus 9 is 4. You can finally take the absolute value of that. The absolute value of 4 is just 4. Right? Remember, the absolute value of number is always positive or 0. Don't forget that. Right? 12. Again, so this one says, let me just write a little bit. 3 times the absolute value of 2 minus 4 minus 7. Okay, so we have to take the absolute value first, multiply by 3, and then subtract 7. So 2 minus 4 is -2 minus 7. Now you can take the absolute value of -2. What's the absolute value of -2? So this becomes 2. So how far is -2? How far is -2 from 0? 2 units away. So the absolute value of -2 is 2. So I'm going to change that to 2. And then minus 7. 3 minus 2 is 6. Minus 7. We got -1. Answer is B. Where am I? 13. What's, again, another one. What's the value of the expression below? Okay, so -7, 2 to the 4th, right? We got to change this standard notation. It's an exponential form right now. So 2 times 2 to the 4th power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 2, 4, 8, 16. So let's change that to 16. Minus 10, and then plus 3. Step at a time, okay? Absolute value, can't take this absolute value yet. So let's do 16 minus 10. Well, so it's -7 times 16 minus 10 is 6. Plus 3, I can finally take the absolute value. The absolute value of 6 is 6, so it's -7 times 6. Remember, there was a multiplication sign here. It's invisible, but it's there, even over here. 7 times 6, -7 plus 6 plus 3. -7 times 6 is -42 plus 3, and that's equal to -39. Do we have that? Yeah, we do. Right here. 14. What kind of number results from simplifying 9 pi divided by 6 pi? Okay. So if you have 9 pi and you're dividing that by 6 pi, let's see what we get. Well, pi divided by pi can go away, right? It simplifies to 1 because pi divided by pi is just 1, and then 9 times 1 is 9, and 6 times 1 is 6. So that just becomes 9 over 6. This can change. We can simplify. Let's simplify 3 over 2. And we simplify to 1.5 or 1.5. So let's see. What kind of number results from simplify? Is it a whole number? Is my answer a whole number? Nope. Right, it's not. It's a whole number and more. Is it a repeating decimal? Is it 1.55555 forever and ever and ever and ever? No, it's not. Is it a terminating decimal? Doesn't mean. Is it a decimal that ends? Yeah, 1.5. There's nothing after that. It ends. Okay, so it is definitely C. Let's see D, a non-repeating decimal that does not terminating, meaning something like pi, 3.14159. And notice that pi doesn't repeat and goes on forever. Is it a number like that? Definitely not. It's just your old fashioned terminating decimal. Your normal decimal that ends 1.5. 15. Miss Brown gave her class the following mental math problem. Find the product of -8 and -7. Multiply your answer by 5. Then divide your result by -5. What is the final number? Find the product of -8 and -7. So they're asking us to multiply -8 times -7, which is negative times a negative. We get 56. Good. Multiply that by 5. So take 56, multiply by 5. 0. I get 280. Then divide the result by -5. And divide 280 by -5. So 280 divided by -5 is going to give me a negative number. So I'm going to take this guy out because I don't want to look at it. I want to take this guy out because I don't want to look at So it's either going to be, so think about it, 280 divided by negative 5 is going to be negative 56, or is it going to be negative 280? Well, duh, it can't be negative 280, so it has to be negative 56, right? Just by process of elimination, we can conclude that the answer is 15 is A. Okay? Use that. Such a powerful tool, right? Process of elimination. Which expression is equivalent to negative 8 minus 12? All right. Okay. So, well, negative 8 minus 12, it equals to negative 20, first of all. All right. So when you're doing this, I mean, just put in your calculator, put all 4 of them, and whoever gets negative 20, that's the one that you want. A, negative 8 plus negative 12. You have negative 8, and you're adding negative 12, which means you're going further left on the number line, right? And you're already at negative 8, so if you go further 12 steps left on the number line, you get to negative 20? Yeah, you do. So A is good. 8 minus 12. Well, 8 minus 12, right, if you think about it, 8 minus 12 is the same thing as 8 plus negative 12. Right, you're on positive 8 this time, right? You're on positive 8, so think of what your starting point is. You're on positive 8, and you're going to walk to the left 12 units. That reach takes you to negative 4. Definitely not it. 8 plus 12, obviously. That's not it. And negative 8 minus negative 12, so if you want to write it as an addition, you can write it like this. This one is you're at negative 8, and you're moving to the right on the number line, right? Because you're adding 12. So you're at negative 8, you're going to the right. You're not even going further left, you're going further right. So you're right gaining in value, right? So negative 8 plus 12 is 4. So also not what you want. So the only one that made sense was A. Not that made sense, the only one that was equal was A. 17, what is the quotient when 50, so what's the quotient when 51 is divided by negative 17? First of all, our quotient is going to be negative something. So this is garbage, that's garbage, because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So now you just got to figure this out. Is it negative 3 or negative 34? And there's not much to think about here. 51 divided by 17. Is it 3 or is it 34? Is it negative 3 or is it negative 34? Well, if you had $51 and you have 17 friends, do each of them get $3 or do each of them get $34? I'm going to say this guy here. Use your calculator though. Okay. But again, what's the product of 3 times negative 17? Well, 3 times negative 16 is a positive times a negative, which is going to give you a negative. Right, it's going to give a negative product. So again, don't look at this one. Don't look at that one. And 3 times negative 16, can it be negative 13? No, we can't. So the only other option is negative 48. And again, all you have to do is put in your calculator, and you would have gotten your answer right away. That's it for day 1.